Hi, my name is Peggy Ployhar, and I'm the founder and CEO of SPED Homeschool. We are a nonprofit that helps parents to homeschool children with special educational needs. And the seminar that I'm going to give today, or kind of a shortened version of my regular seminar on customizing your child's curriculum, it's going to be just about what you can do to make learning more customized to your students, whoever they are, whether they are gifted or they tend to be gifted in some subjects and not in others, and they struggle in others, which we call a 2E learner, or if they struggle kind of across the board. And that's the beauty of homeschooling. And it's something that we've kind of lost touch with because we have so many curriculum options now as homeschoolers. We forget that when homeschoolers first started talking about the beauty of homeschooling, it was because schooling can be customized to a child. And that's really what I want to get to the heart of today, because it's something that I don't want you to miss out, because you are searching for the right curriculum while all the while the right curriculum was in your home, but maybe just needed a little tweaking and changing. And it's something that I did in my homeschooling, and that's why I'm so passionate about it. So I've been homeschooling for 18 years. Our homeschooling journey started because my oldest was diagnosed on the autism spectrum when he was 5. And now he is turning 23 this next month and graduating from college the month after that. And so it's been quite the journey for us. I've graduated actually 2 struggling learners out of my homeschool, and I'm now homeschooling one last child who's 15. So I'm going to share from you a wealth of information that I've gathered through this. And like I said, this is a condensed version of my talk that I do in this, but I'm going to give you the meat of what you need to know. And I also want you to know that some of the things I'm going to talk about sound really daunting, especially when you think, oh, I can just pick up a curriculum and that's going to work better for my child and it's going to save me time. But in the end, what I want you to take away from this is that saving time on the front end doesn't mean you're going to save time in the long run. And what I have found in customizing each of my children's educations is that the work that I put into the front has saved me so much time of having to reteach, find new resources, and fill in gaps that were created because I didn't do it right the first time. So maybe you're thinking, I'm just going to turn this off. That's something I don't want to do. I want you to hang on, because I'm going to show you just the simple things that you can do with maybe things you already own. It's not going to cost you any extra money, and you can customize your own child's education to fit their needs, and also to use your own personality to do it. So the first thing that I want to talk about is just standard curriculum. I don't want to tell you that standard curriculum is bad or not. Actually, I was speaking at the Homeschool Trade Association's conference last year to a bunch of curriculum developers, and I told them, I said, our parents that have children who struggle, maybe across the board or in one subject or another, can use your curriculum. But what they need from you is more options, because we as parents have to get really creative. If we have to extend out your curriculum, instead of just doing a 1-week set of lessons in 1 week, that we have to do them for a month. And we would love more content to be able to use across that month to keep working on those concepts. And so it doesn't mean that an online option or a more hands-on option or a classical approach or a Montessori approach is going to be better. But if you can give us variables that we can use if we find our child still needs more content in studying that one thing, then that's really going to help us as parents. And they were like, wow, yes, we can do that. And so I'm excited that more curriculum companies are now thinking in that range. And I'm hoping that we can encourage that more as our organization speaks with these curriculum developers. So just know that we're out there advocating for that for you as well. Because box curriculum is written to help you to be able to teach your student. It's just always following it for one day. For some children, it wasn't written for your child. It was written for a mass amount of children. And so when you pick up a curriculum, just know that from the get-go. There are some basics, language, arts, and math. We have to teach them as the groundwork for all other learning so that eventually our students can pick up anything and be able to learn from them. That is our goal. Our goal is not to be able to get them to pass a standardized test. It's for them to be able to use this knowledge and to be able to grow this knowledge through the rest of their lives. And so, yes, of course, we need to teach them how to be literate, which is the basis of language arts. And for some children, that literacy is going to be able to be how to read signs, how to distinguish what a product is in the grocery store. For some, it's going to be reading literature like Shakespeare, but that will depend on your child. And how you teach language arts needs to fit who your child is, where they are at, and build on those building blocks every step of the way. For some children, like I said, that's going to happen fast. And for some, it's going to take a long time. And so be willing to be flexible in what you call reading, in what you call spelling, and what you call writing, and what you call grammar, because all of those things are going to be different to different children with different language abilities. And so, so customizing it is going to be just that. It's going to be customizing it. Reading may be the process of learning phonics or the process of memorizing whole words. It may be you reading to your child because they will never get to the point where they will do that. It may be that you read a sentence, your child reads a sentence, and then you read it again and they read it again, and they learn how to mimic those words. And that words are things that are written in a book that we then see maybe as a picture and turn into something that we speak. So, so thinking outside the box on those types of things. And also with math concepts are extremely difficult. They need to be built one upon the other. And one thing I always stress with parents when teaching math is that math curriculum is often written to build on top of the previous subject. Now, not all math curriculums are developed by the same people. And so they think a fundamental concept for one math lesson built on another math lesson may have a different series of steps or basic foundational steps to build on for the next step. And so if you switch math curriculums, sometimes that track will be rerouted. So I always tell parents to go back. If you switch on math curriculums to kind of go back maybe a half a year and start over. Your child will succeed, of course, more at those math lessons, but it will help to make sure that you don't have any gaps because, like I said, math curriculum developers follow a different series of steps. There's no standard way to teach math. There are some pretty typical ways, but sometimes they'll teach fractions and division and other things in different orders. And so you don't want your child to miss any of those foundational elements when doing that. So, but let's move on. Desks and books don't always mean learning. For some children, they're too wiggly to be able to have all their learning in those places. Sometimes they need to be laying on the floor, building a fort, doing hands-on projects, because that is how they connect with learning better, or it's how they focus better on what they need to learn. So you have to take that in mind with your student, and where are they pulling the most information out of? As you teach your child at home and homeschool, you will learn that there are certain things your child gravitates towards, and that's usually where they learn best. And so I just want to let you know that no matter how much your child struggles, and maybe no matter how much they stay focused on one thing and you think they're never going to want to learn anything else, dream for them, dream big for them, and then learn by studying your child and then customizing their education based on who they are. So I'm going to share some examples with you because I have 3 very different children, and I've customized their education based on who they are and what I learned by studying them. So my oldest, like I said, was diagnosed at the age of 5 on the autism spectrum. And that's when we started our homeschooling process. And I learned very quickly, and I knew this about him from before, because he loved to build with Legos. He was building those Lego sets that said, age 5 or more before he was even 3. And he could follow every single one of the steps. And after that, then it was taken apart and made into something new because he wanted to create. He is a creator. And so for him, schooling, when we did any of our unit studies, and we mostly did unit studies through their younger years, and he even did unit studies through high school because it was a good fit for him. And so I would always assign him building projects. So we were studying some historical thing, and I said, well, why don't you go build out of Legos, out of a cardboard box, out of anything, something from this lesson that would cause him to think about that. Well, Mindstorm classes, the Science Museum was another good place to plug him into building things. We even spent one whole year on mechanical engineering. He was in 5th grade. Now you think that's probably pretty odd, but what I did is Connects has a set with historical bridges. And so we actually built historical bridges, one every week, as part of his mechanical engineering class. And he created these elaborate structures, but yet at the same time was learning by putting these pieces together how the strength of that bridge was built because of the way the elements connected. So he was learning. And like I said, through high school, he even did unit studies. He was out building projects and doing other things. He did a welding class. He did some other types of industrial classes. He actually went to welding school for his senior year. And now, this next month, he's graduating with a degree in biomedical engineering. It was a good fit for him. He was an engineer at heart. He loves what he is headed into doing as a career, and you could tell that from a very young age. And so I used that to continually bring him back into this love of learning and this desire to learn. Yes, there were many things he struggled with. He struggled with making friends. He struggled with reading, but yet we worked on those things, but always made time to focus on the things that he did good so that he didn't get frustrated. So then I'm going to go on to my next child. He's now 21, and he is a very creative sort. Instead of wanting to build like his brother, he always wanted to put on a costume and to reenact everything that we were reading about and learning about. He interacted through the relational parts of the stories and the learning, and he would build costumes instead. He would act out things as I read them and do them. As he got into his high school years, he was building computers, and we found that was another love of that he had. And he was making podcasts with friends, again, connecting. He had friends all around the world. Actually, when we went to Russia a couple of years ago for a homeschool conference I was speaking at, he met up with one of the guys that he's been friends with online for years. He's corrected manuscripts for foreigners in English as part of his English curriculum. So for him, it had to be very social, very interactive. He was on the speech and debate team of our local high school because that was something that was allowed in our state in Minnesota when we lived there. And so we took advantages of all those social opportunities, all those online, technical, entrepreneurial types of things. And And it just gave him a love for learning, which he decided because of his dyslexia, he didn't want to go to college. And so we gave him a gap year to continue to expand those things out even after he graduated. He taught himself how to play 2 different guitars, the bass guitar, the regular electric guitar. He learned more about cooking, and then he started getting into bartending things, and he just graduated from bartending school as well. So, so that love of learning, that intimate knowledge of him wanting to always connect with people, to be creative, and to continue to create was something that we cultivated throughout his learning. And I have to share one story of customizing his curriculum that I thought was so funny. We used a math curriculum that was based out of Singapore, and they would always talk about prawns, which shrimp, and in their different word problems. And it would always mess him up when you started talking about these things that he could not socially relate to because they weren't part of our culture. My oldest couldn't have cared less. You give him the number, he'll figure out the problem. But for him, that was a stopping point whenever we started doing these word problems. And I realized that as I was working with him, I thought, you know what, when we do the problem without those words in it, he does them fairly okay. But so I thought, well, let's go with this interest of his, which happened to be superheroes and, of course, costumes. And I said, so if Batman had this many of, what is throwing darts or whatever, and, make the word problem out of that, guess what? He got the answer instantly. Because we took out that one stopping block, that one thing that was messing him up in his thinking process of doing the math problem. It wasn't the actual math he was frustrated with or stopped by. It was the other stuff that was put into the word problem. So just something to think about. So then we get on to my daughter, who tends to be the very creative sort. And I've always known that about her. We started teaching her sewing at a very young age, and then she moved from sewing into art. She took some art classes from some professional artists and has gone to taking some classes at our local art school. And so oftentimes when we study things, I build art into her assignments because it's a way that she expresses herself. And now she's actually moved back to sewing again, and she's making custom outfits. But allowing her that ability to create, again, she's another creative sort, but more with the crafts and building jewelry and doing all these other things. So studying, different places and time periods and building those into her projects. So those are some ways that you can customize your child's education. And it does take a little bit of tweaking and changing. And like I said, it's ways you can adapt things you already have. And so I'm just going to give you some quick pointers on how to do that, how to take what you have and to make it a little more customized. So say I have a history textbook that really has good content in it, but I know that if I read it word for word to my children, they'd be asleep or out the door. So what I would do often is I would sit down in the evenings and pre-read it myself. I'd highlight the things that I thought were really important to talk about. Leave out the wordiness, the things that the author maybe added in just to kind of bridge them. Maybe words and vocabulary you don't even use in your household or your children aren't ready for. A lot of times we can convey information at a much higher level of information to kids that are a lot younger if we just translate it into how we talk in our homes. So I would then just, when we sat down to do our group learning, I would relay that information in ways that they would understand, like a conversation versus reading it just out of the textbook. Another thing is that sometimes curriculum will give you lots of options. And I know when I first started doing our unit studies, that was one thing that I was so thankful that the curriculum developer said to me. She just said, you don't have to do all of it. All of these options are given to you so you have options but they are options. They are not required. And that goes for math too. They give you 60 some problems sometimes. Does your child need to do them all to have learned? No. Pick and choose from different problems and then see how your student does. If you're working one-on-one with them, you can watch and see if they're following the process correctly or not. The same goes with discussion questions. As you're discussing things, do you really need to ask all the questions? Do you maybe just need to ask the first question, see if they have understanding, and go on and ask another question? The other thing is just bringing the context of what you have in your materials to life. And there are so many resources that are free that you can do this with. You can watch videos on YouTube, of course, pre-screen them. Field trips, you can do experiments. You can read real-life books from the library or that you can find on Amazon. We do a lot of audiobooks because we travel a lot. And so I pick the audiobooks for what time period we're going to study the following year. And through the summer, we would listen to the books through our summer travels. Journaling, art, like I talked about, building, writing poems, researching tangent ideas. These are all things that you can do to expand upon and solidify what your students learning in a curriculum that maybe is only setting the framework for what you're teaching in your homeschool. And again, it costs you no money if you already own it. Another thing is adding color to different things that you're using. Sometimes black and white pictures just don't do justice. So adding color to maybe a black and white picture, have your students colored if they like coloring. Another way I've learned color is really important is I've been tutoring a young man in algebra who has memory issues. And so when we do math, the positive numbers are written in black, the negative numbers are written in red. And for him, that helps him to figure out what he needs to do with those numbers, because not always does he remember all the things that need to go with it, but the color will cause him to think, oh, that's what I need to do. Again, stories are awesome. We did read out louds throughout our homeschooling career, and like I said, sometimes audiobooks because mom didn't have enough time to be reading and driving at the same time and all those things. Another thing for visuals is to have a timeline up in a room. My kids would always have the visual schedule of what the day was going to be like, what their assignments were going to be. They loved having the alphabet when they were younger and learning how to write the letters up on the wall so that they could visually see it and see if they were writing it in the right direction. And you know what? The great thing about homeschooling is those visuals stay on your walls even when you're not doing school. So when my kids walked through the dining room every day, they were learning things whether I was teaching them at that time or not, because they were just looking at them. So just some great benefits. And also I want to address testing. Testing is not an instructional method. Testing is just seeing where your student is at based on somebody else's opinion of what should be tested. So if there's a test that comes with your curriculum, don't put a lot of weight on it, because that is what that curriculum developer thinks is most important. Make sure you add in other things and other ways of testing your student. I just interviewed someone recently on my broadcast, and I'll talk about that in a minute, how you can get linked into our resources. But what he shared was that, you can learn so much through projects and giving your children problems to use the information they already have to test their knowledge at a much higher level than a multiple choice test could ever give you information about. So that's really important to remember, is that tests only gauge at one specific level, and they don't always test what is really important. And then I would say push your children, but not too hard, because they need to know that when things are on the edge of what they think they can do, that they can pull together resources to learn what they need to accomplish a goal. And I've seen my kids do that over and over again when they feel like, I don't know if I can actually do this, that you give them the resources they need and say, I think you can. And so here's a project based on the information, or something that I want you to build based on what we've been studying. Here's the things that we've learned. You can get resources from here as well and here as well. Now, let's see what you can do with that, because that is really what we're moving our children towards, is to be able to take the information, to synthesize what they've learned and to use it in the real world, because that's what we do as our kids move on and move out of our homeschools and into life. So I want to encourage you to do that. Finally, I just want to tell you a little bit about our resources at SPED Homeschool. We have a lot of them. We, again, are a nonprofit. Everything that we offer parents is completely free. And we just ask you to dive into those things on our website. We have a lot of great articles. We also have a YouTube channel with over 500 videos. We do a weekly broadcast that's live, that you can watch on our Facebook page, our YouTube channel, as well as our Periscope channel. And you can interact with our guests who happen to be homeschool conference speakers or therapists, special educators, college professors in different areas. We focus on a different subject each month. And so that is to encourage you in different areas of resources that you might need. But you can always go back and watch previous episodes. And then we also break those episodes down into some shorter segments as well, based on what the conversation really focused on. So we have that. We have partners that sell curriculum that we have already looked at, that we say, this is something that's very adaptable. It's very, very much in line with what we're telling you can do here. A lot of their curriculum helps you to do that much easier than you having to come up with a lot of things on your own. But we also have therapists that do teletherapy and in-person therapy. We have consultants that will come alongside you and work with you one-on-one. And so just lots and lots of resources. But I'm going to put up our website so you can see that as well. And I just want to close by encouraging you and letting you know that you can do this, and that you can customize your students' education. And it really isn't as hard as it looks. And like I said at the very beginning, it may sound really daunting to do this, but as you've probably gathered, yes, it takes a little bit of work on the front end, but my kids enjoyed school. They thought it was so much fun. We didn't have battles at, getting your work done and doing this, because I customized it and made it unique to each of them. And they saw learning as something that was not only enjoyable, but something that challenged them, and also that they were rewarded with, because they were able to accomplish things and do something that they really loved. And so I just encourage you to customize your students' education. And if you need any help, definitely look at our website at spedhomeschool.com and plug into all the resources that we have as well.